G'day friends and fans, welcome to Dave Talk Stuff Ukraine War Update for the 13th of July 2026. I'm your host, the author David Applegate. And while the war continues, I'll continue to bring my unbiased coverage from both sides. The media should be independent. Unfortunately, far too many people have not experienced independent media and therefore don't understand. Independent media means bringing the news from both sides so that you can decide who's right and who's wrong. Frankly, as I've said often, war doesn't decide who's right. It decides who's left. Now, the battle reports seem to be concentrated today. And just a short time ago, Russia attacked Zaporizhzhia with a glide bomb. The Russian drone missile attack, of course, as usual, has been swift, but in a swift response to Ukrainian attacks on Russia. They usually follow about 2 to 3 hours after a Ukrainian attack. Ukraine has attacked shipping in the Sea of Azov with drone boats, and Russia responded by attacks on Odessa. They continued with strikes across Russia using drones attached to stratosphere balloons. Now, as far as I know, these winds sort of go east with the rotation. So you go up and it comes round to the Now there's been reports, of course, of fighting in the Lyman area and shelling of positions in and around Lyman. That's this area here. Fighting concentrated here, headed to... I was wrong. I thought the Russians would go for Zaporizhzhia last, but they probably want to crush the Ukrainian army, and so they are going to put them in a squeeze. I thought the squeeze would look like this, but now it's looking more like this. But however, it does depend on the battlefield. Russia is using a couple of generals, not one general. The overall command general decides the order of battle. They change it daily. And it is, according to several reports from Russia, the Russian command are doing things based on how the Ukrainian front crumbles. The idea being to have multiple phased attacks. So, though they are pushing up here, they have advanced on the Renishki. It appears there is no significant town that has fallen. The front here is rippling, but it is only tiny gains. Now, yesterday, the Ukrainians claimed Russia actually lost negative 9.8 square meters. Yet today, the mayor of Zaporizhzhia, in an interview with Al Jazeera, puts the Russians says the Russians advanced south of Zaporizhzhia, which is not reflected on any map. Now, is the mayor of Zaporizhzhia spreading disinformation? Who knows? But no significant town has fallen today. The front is angling, and there are areas pushing out. And this fits with the Russian doctrine so far, is that they are pushing up and then out. So they are flanking and attacking some cities from multiple angles. This could be why they're going for... they could be pressuring Seversk merely to draw in troops from other areas, such as Lyman. That would make sense. But for now, it doesn't make tactical sense for a head-on when both armies are yet at full strength during this rotation, although the Russians probably feel they have the advantage. But, of course, that means they're possibly facing a straight line of incoming troops. They must have something ready, something up their sleeve, something the Ukrainians can't see or anticipate. Outskirts. See, I think if they'd used an Outskirts sooner, but the Outskirts wasn't ready for Bakhmut, the first combat test. Now, you've seen how devastating it is. You've seen what Koshnikovia looks like. You've seen, they won't show you other cities. But there is fires in Zaporizhzhia. We're within artillery, long-range artillery range now, not just glide bombs. So, and of course, both air forces are still pretty much operating away from the front line, though the Russians are still sneaking up to the front line to launch glide bombs. But mostly it's drones, and they've hit drone strikes deep into Ukraine in retaliation for today's attacks on Russia. Now, there are economic reports that do say Russian production of drones is higher than the European production of drones, and that Europe is wondering why Russia is maintaining such a large stockpile. And right now, I think some of the drone strikes in Ukraine are just trying to lure them, find. They are, what's it called? Exploratory attack. Now, before I continue, this channel is sponsored by you, the viewing audience, Empire Valves. That's one word, empirevalves.myshopify.com, your one-stop shop for enchanting treasures based on my writing. From mainstream media, we have reports today that Ukraine's Prime Minister has been fired. Officially, she stepped down but she was summoned to Zelensky's office. Zelensky announced the reshuffling of his government, and she steps down. She was fired. Fresh changes, saying it's new important positions. Yeah. Why is this? Well, wartime elections are prohibited, remember. And how many times has he reshuffled? How many times has... If he was on a winning team, a winning formula, he wouldn't change the deck, would he? He wants to strengthen Ukraine's position. I thought you were winning. Yeah. Zaporizhzhia mayor. Again, this is Western media, not pro-Russian media. You may think, it's pro-Russian. Now, most of their stories are not pro-Russian. They're just very inefficient and rarely put out stories. They are more obsessed with the Middle East than they are anywhere else, so they're not reporting much on Ukraine anymore. They were in the beginning of the war, and sometimes they still do. But most of their stories are mirrored from Ukiform, the official state media of Ukraine. If you don't like TASS, for being Russian state media. You have to not like Ukiform for being Ukraine or Pravda. Even though Pravda is privately owned now, they're still acting like state media. That is, they glaze the state of Ukraine. But yeah, Russian airstrike on Zaporizhzhia. The troops are just over 20 kilometers away. That's a big advance. So Ukraine is, who's lying? The mayor? See, this is the problem. You have to go through sometimes the timestamps to see, because battlefields change sometimes so quickly. But the Russians are rarely going to advance that fast. "20 kilometers. So that would put them here. It would make sense if they would show how big the grey zone is. That's the patrol operating area of the Russian army. Although the grey area is grey because Ukraine also, that's how they clash. Patrols go into Russian occupied territory. They don't just sit in each other's trenches all day taking pot shots. These are actual clashes. Now, if the war's taking a lull, we've seen this before. The Sunday dip, you get the Sunday dip, and then the midweek spike, and of course, no significant town, but they are of course trying to expand the buffer zone. They were moving this way, but it seems change in direction, taking the rest of this, taking the rest of this, but again, nothing major. So now Russia is reporting overnight attacks on Ukrainian ports, having attacked both Ukrainian ships, and facilities for military cargo. Russia claims that no Western defense can match their missiles. That is not true, but it's Russian media. They have to say it. But you're going to say, well, how do you know this is true? Again, we go to the Ukrainian map. We actually get some photos today. It's working for once. Now, again, that's why we know the precision isn't so precise. But we do have reports of explosions in Zaporizhzhia and Odessa, and multiple drone attacks on transport enterprise, which you can see is wiped out. But this gives you an idea of how big their precision. Their precision is, I can hit a building. That's Russian precision. They can hit within 3 meters. So, big building. Aim for the middle, come through the front door. It's still a hit. Alright, so, yes. No. Oops. Sorry. My computer died suddenly, and yeah. So I've had to use a backup, an old computer as a backup. Hopefully it's just the keyboard. My computer, I'm on a laptop. If not, I have to buy another computer because this one can't I can't stream games on. I can't even play some of the games on this one. I haven't used this since 2021. That's, yeah, just the way it is, I guess. So, links in the description below. Support the channel, please. Ko-Fi, Patreon, buy my books, buy my merch. All my links are in the link tree, which you'll find in the profile description. I really appreciate any and all help you can give right now. I am just a humble old man retired. Just trying to make ends meet on a state pension. And I guess the truth doesn't pay. The truth doesn't set people free. People don't want the truth. But I'll continue to bring the truth to you. One of these days, the pendulum will swing and people will stop wanting to be entertained by the news and actually be informed by the news. So for now, thank you and good luck. Because most people out there don't care about the truth, and that's a dangerous world to be in. Bye for now.